father was Maltese, and it's a Maltese surname. It's also, if you look at the Cilia spelling, it's in the middle of Sicilian as well. But my mum's English, my dad's Maltese, that's where the name comes from. So when I was 9, my parents decided to immigrate to Australia. 10-pound Poms. We landed in Fremantle, Perth, Western Australia, in 1968, end of January 68. And we stayed there, well, family, my mum's still in the same house. The family bought in 1968. She's still in the same house now. And I played in various Perth bands. I went back to England for a year in 1980. Played a bit over there in bands. Got a call from some friends in Perth. Said, look, we're doing this tour for 3 months. Why don't you come back and do a tour with us and you can go back? And I thought, oh yeah, it's not a bad idea, because I had run out of money. Because like, you know, just making, you know, trying to live in London on a musician's wage, doing a original band was like, yeah, there's no fun in the end. So I thought I'll come back, and I did that run, and I haven't been without a gig since. So what happened, so I played in Perth all through the 80s, and then I was playing with a band called Dave Warner's from the Suburbs. This is in the later part of the 80s, and we'd tour, and we'd come to Sydney, and I'd been to Sydney a few times with other bands, and with the Perth scene, I figured out, I've been in a band, you get to the top of the scene, there's only one way to go, you go down again. I've got another band, got to the top of the scene, and there's only a small scene, you know, but it's a good musical scene, good bands, good players. And then in the very late 80s, I was coming into Sydney doing tours in Melbourne and stuff, and then one time I thought I'll stay for a little while, you know, maybe a couple of months. Then I thought I'll stay for a year, and I'm still here 30-something years later. It's, you know, I've landed on my feet, which is really good. My father worked for a company called AWA, which was an electronics company back in the late 60s, early 70s, and he was a TV radio technician, and he had an apprentice who was he played in a band, and my dad always liked guitar. He was a big fan of the Shadows and those bands, the guitar bands in England at the time, and he got his apprentice, who lived 2 streets away from us, to come around with an old acoustic guitar one day, and he showed me 2 chords on it, and I played 2 chords, G and C, and I just played those over and over and over. And I think, unbeknownst to me, my dad bought the guitar off him. And so I had this acoustic guitar, you know, and so just old nylon string. So I just play over and over, and I learn another couple of chords. It wasn't like today, you just go on the internet, or you get all the information was freely available. It was like, I never could see anybody play. I must have been 11 or 12. So and I learned another chord, D, and I just play it over and over, just playing between those 3 chords, sounding good. I like the sound of the guitar. It's the sound that got me in. So I like the sound, so I get them playing good. And then, you know, you get to school, you meet people, and then I hear this guy over there, he knows A minor. So you go, knock on the door, hey, you know, and then they show you a couple of chords, and you just learn from there. And then once I worked out I could figure stuff off records, I went through every record in the house and tried to learn all the songs. So once I figured that out, so the first song I learned properly was a song called Apache by the Shadows. So I figured that out. And then by that time we had a band at school. I've been 13, I was just in high school. And we used to rehearse in lunchtime and after school. And there's a school concert, we put on a concert, you had the dancers, and you had all the whatever acts. And me and my mates, we did a band. We knew 6 songs, and the first song we played was Apache. It was the first song I ever played in public. We did a couple of Shadow songs, a couple of Monkeys songs, and a couple of Cat Stevens songs, I think. When I grew up, I wasn't aware of the American surf scene. It just wasn't. The Shadows and some European bands like Spotniks and that sort of thing. I'd heard of Dick Dowell. I had heard of the Ventures, who were the main acts in America, plus other incidental ones, but I didn't know their music. I discovered some Australian stuff, a band called the Atlantics, which I later went on to play with. Everyone thought the Atlantics were an international band, not an Australian band. Australian music, it's different to the rest of the world, especially with Australian pub rock. So when I was playing the songs, after being in pub rock bands in Australia, I was playing it differently. Didn't sound anything like the Shadows, didn't sound anything like that, didn't sound like anywhere else. So when I did my surf stuff, which I do now, that background came from the Australian pub rock background. I'm sure purists would think I'm too rock, and rock people will think I'm too surf, you know. I think it's one of those. I'm off to the States next week to play at the Surf Guitar 101 convention, and I'll be taking more of the, you know, more of the approach, just what I do here in Australia. You know, it's like you play with a different attitude. And one thing my dad taught me, my dad didn't like a thin guitar sound. He always liked, on electric guitar, he always liked a thick sound like Hank Marvin. We like Richie Blackmore from Deep Purple, his early guitar sound. I sort of landed in between. It's not American, it's not English, it's Australian, what I do. What's been pointed out to me by other people watching me play is, if I sit around now and play a guitar unplugged, it sounds the same as what I do on stage, it's louder through amplifiers, virtually. I play quite hard, harder than what I realise, but I project. So I make a guitar sound louder than what some people do. So I find the projection, we have to in pub rock Australia, with especially coming from the 80s and 90s when they had the big PAs, and you've got to get out there and reach the back of the room, you know, keep the listener interested. Nice. So I tend to play a little bit firmer and make every note count. So 14, 15 years old, I was doing 2 or 3 gigs a week professionally, and on Wednesday nights I just played this place in Perth called the Sterling Arms. It was a strip night. That's where the stripper was on Wednesday nights. So I used to be playing there. My mum and dad would drop me off often, you know. And it was interesting, because I played there with Mental as Anything a few years ago, and I played there with the Rads a few weeks ago. And I was just saying, oh, that's where the strippers just come out there, and you know, I remember the whole thing. And so I used to go there. We used to play songs like Rolling Stones, Creedence, Status Quo, that sort of repertoire back then. And I go to school the next day, and the kids would go, so who was the stripper? You know, I'd be going there. They'd say, how was the gig? I go, oh, the gig was great. You know, yeah, we did this great version of, you know, some song. We got the ending. We nailed the ending. It was really good. They go, no. How was double about the strippers? Even the girls at school were asking, you know. Okay, the Atlantics formed officially in 1961, even though a couple of guys were going in the band before that. 4-piece Australian guitar band. They had a singer, a 5th member mostly, but they're known for their 4-piece instrumental. The big hit is a song called Bombora. It was #1 in Australia in 1963 for 8 weeks in Sydney. I'm pretty sure it's the first #1 song written by an Australian. They wrote the song. Jim and Peter from the band wrote the song. I'm pretty sure it's the first original song that went to #1 that was recorded and written by an Australian band. And I thought, I'm going to make a guitar album for myself that I like. So I started writing songs. I had some already written, and it was in that sort of Shadows, Atlantic style. And then I had a studio booked. I gave myself 3 months. I booked the studio 3 months ahead, give myself a deadline to make things happen. And that was A-Sharp Studio. And I started getting songs together. I had them pretty well together. A few weeks out from recording, I ran into Bosco Bosnak, who's the original bass player for the Atlantics. A friend of mine who introduced us and said, oh, you should meet this person. He had a vintage record shop in Parramatta Road at the time in Sydney. And so I was chatting, we got on well, and then I said, oh, look, I've got this album I'm doing. Would you be interested in playing bass on a couple of songs? And he just looked at me and he goes, what do you want my clunky old bass on your songs for? So I gave him a cassette in my pocket. I pulled the cassette out. I said, well, have a listen. There's 4 or 5 songs on there, whatever, anything you like. Just, you know, I'd love you to come and play on it. And a few days went by, nothing. And then one Friday afternoon, the phone rings. He goes, it's Bosco here. Oh, yeah, Bosco, okay. He goes, look, I don't want to play on your recordings. I went, oh, fair enough. He goes, but would you be interested in joining the Atlantics? But we want to play your songs. So he played the stuff to the other guys, and they went, who's this guy? And that's how it worked. And next thing I know, I was in the studio and we did an album. It was like, and we got on like, we'd known each other forever. We ended up doing a couple of TV shows. My first gig with them was on live TV. Studio 22, I think it was. And we did a few other TV shows early 2000. Then we did the Olympics, the closing ceremony. And then we toured, did a lot of stuff. We did, I think, we had 3 or 4 albums out in the first few years, and then yeah, that's how it happened. It was just like, and I get to rehearsal, and the guys would sometimes just start playing old songs from mid '60s, And what I do is, after rehearsal, we'd rehearse in the day. So I go home, and each night after dinner, I had a cassette player or CD player. I put on an album of the old Atlantics, and I'd try and learn as many songs as I could. Luckily, every song they played was one I learnt. So they just start playing these songs. I just start playing. And when I said, "Oh, gee, that's the first time I played that one. I'm glad I got through." They looked at me like weird. I thought, "Oh, haven't you played that before?" Why? They didn't understand that I hadn't been with them the whole time, which is lovely. We did an Australian tour with the Beach Boys and Chris Isaac. We went to Europe and played a festival there in Spain. And then a few years later, we got back together and we went to Finland, Italy. We did a Surfer Joe festival in Italy. And our last gig was in Athens, 2013. That was our last gig. I got back from a tour, came home, the message there, Mentals are looking for you. And then I ended up doing Mentals anything. Mentals had just the ideal pop songs. No two songs the same. As most people in Australia know, Mentals anything have the most chart entries more than any other band, Australian or worldwide. Can't remember what the number is, 23 or 24 songs made the charts. Yeah, it might have been in like numbers, 25 or something, but they made the charts. So Mentals had a huge amount of hits, and when we were playing a set, it was which hits to leave out because you couldn't play them all. And I met Greedy, and I met the guys when I was doing the Atlantics did gigs with Mentals. And also when I was with Dave Warner, Greedy would come down and sometimes perform with Dave Warner's band. So I knew them, and it was a distinct change. But I thought, this is great. It's like good bunch of guys, good songs. It was good to be in. So I did that up until the passing of Greedy Smith, and then COVID came along, and everything changed again. Got the call towards the end of the COVID period saying, look, if this comes up, would you be interested in joining the Radiators? Radiators is a definitely harder playing than, say, Mentals, because Mentals is, we had the keyboard player, there's 2 guitars, keyboards, drums, and bass. So it was spread out between everybody. In the Rads, Brian, the singer, plays the occasional guitar, but I play I'm the only chordal instrument, so I've got to cover everything. So you've got to be on all the time. Atlantics is different because you're like the lead person, you're selling the song, you're the melody guy, and you just got to nail it, I think overall I just like being in a band. Rock and roll's got to be dangerous. It's got an element of danger in it, And I can show you records where I've sometimes hit an open string or something. I could have gone back and redone it, but because it had the energy there, it doesn't matter. It's like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just got to have the element of danger. And if you get too rehearsed, that danger goes. Radios have an element of danger. If any band does, they have it. Well, I knew Fez before. We did some Guitar Hero shows together. When I was learning the Radiator songs, his parts made sense to me. I could understand where he's coming from, why he was doing what he was doing. So I try and learn, before you can change the rules, you've got to know them. So I try and learn what he was doing. And then sometimes I think, after the first couple of gigs, I thought, okay, I could probably make that just a bit more what the band is now. And so I started moving a few things around, but essentially it's Fez guitar parts. Yeah. Well, often we don't see the stage until our intro tape goes on. So you're relying on your crew. Like they check the guitars, make sure everything's working. So, I mean, when I was younger, I used to like setting my gear up. When I was a teenager, it was great, dude. It was fun. Then I was in bands with the road crew. By the early 80s, I had crew in Perth. So, but I didn't have many guitars then, so I'd often take one home because I didn't have, back then you only had like 1 or 2, maybe a guitar you played in spare. Everyone seems to have more now, but it's good. I mean, it's a professional situation, and so we get to the gig, and Mentals and Ink was the same thing. You get there and you get briefed if there's anything unusual about the stage or anything that, that's different, and then you have a couple of drinks and maybe a bit of food. They give you 15 minutes till starters, and you go on. With Mentals, we played everywhere in Australia. We're always one of the reasons I decided to live in this part of town is because not that far to the airport, and the traffic's on this side of town is better. So getting to the airport was easy. Sometimes I was going there twice a week with mentors, so it was a lot less stressful. Even now with Rads, we go maybe once a month. We fly somewhere. So travel, no, I'm quite happy not to. Skyhooks, I listened to Skyhooks recently, one of their later Skyhooks albums, which I didn't really listen to that much in the day. And I thought, oh, right, no, I see now, And going back, after all the years of playing in bands, you hear things differently. So I go back and listen to that. The Shadows' Greatest Hits, the one with the red cover. First song on that album was Apache. And that's, yeah. So I bought the EP. There's an EP, it had 4 songs. And then when I had enough money, I bought the whole album. So in 2011, I went to America, played a handful of gigs over there, and was playing this one gig on a Sunday in a tiki bar in Huntington Beach, down just south of LA. And these people that I sort of knew were there, and they said they were friends of a guitar player called Dick Dow. And they came up to me at the end of the gig and they said, what are you doing tomorrow? It was a Monday morning. I said, well, I was thinking of just flying out to, I don't know, go to Texas. And they said, well, Dick Dow wants to meet you. I said, well, if he wants to meet me, I'm there. So they said, where are you staying? I told them. And they said, we'll be around 10 o'clock in the morning. We'll take you out there. And to his ranch, which is in Death Valley. Right. So, probably about 9:30, phone rings. You don't know if it's just alcohol talking the night before or not. Yep, on our way. Next thing, we're driving to past Joshua Tree, and you see where all the westerns were made. I'm thinking, well, this is great, And then we're going, the trees and shrubs are getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and more desert. Well, where are we? I thought we'd been kidnapped, So we finally get to his ranch, and he wasn't home. So they said, oh no, he's just gone to him and his wife. They've just gone to the post office or the shops or something, which is not exactly 2 minutes away. So we waited there, and eventually comes in, and the guy who drove us there, they're into potted up cars and stuff. So they're talking cars for about 5 minutes until you're standing there. Then Dick Dale walks up to me, looks me up and down. He goes, well, you better come in then. And we just hit it off. We just spent the afternoon in his lounge room just talking stuff, and talking a bit of music, a bit of just life, and then after an hour or two, he just turns to me and he goes, what size shoes do you take? And I went, that's an old question. And with Dick Dow, you don't hesitate, you give him direct answers, like he just bang, 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 just deal. So I thought, I'm thinking American size, Australian sizes are different. So I said, 8. He took his shoes off, said, put these on. So I'm walking around his lounge room wearing his shoes, thinking, this is surreal. It's true. So that would be one of the most unusual moments. I mean, for a jazz player, that's like meeting Miles Davis, and Miles Davis, doing the same thing. Les Paul, fantastic guitar player. Met him in New York, went to his gig, a friend of mine in New York took me, and we went down. He says, a friend of mine's playing down the road, come and meet him. So I went down there, the friend was Les Paul. Got to hang out at the bar with him for a while. Great guy, had a good chat about garage sales and whatever else was going on. That was really interesting, and but mostly musicians. But no, never met a Beatle. Come close to meeting George Harrison one time, but no, never met a Beatle or a Stone. Back in my days in Perth in the 80s, a guitar player called Herb Ellis, a jazz icon, came to Perth. I went to see him play, and just loved what he did. Loved his vibe, his feeling. He had that sort of Texas sort of swing to his jazz playing. I remember going home and just started learning jazz songs, and then I got into the jazz thing. I just started learning jazz repertoire. I don't get a chance to play it much now, but I have a jazz album I've been working on. I've written songs. I've got them all written. Hopefully I'll get to release that at some stage. But yeah, Herb Ellis was a little pub in Perth. It has changed. It's slightly more corporate organised, probably for the better. When I first started, having road crews in the early 80s, it's more like lots of black boxes, lots of stuff to load in. There's more house PAs now. It's more civilised setups. The lighting's better. It's much more user friendly now than how it used to be, say, in the 80s. You've got to want it for the right reasons. Most of the support bands we have, they really appreciate being there and they work hard and they do a good job. But if I see people come in, oh man, I don't really need to be doing this or whatever, then I'd say, well, don't go home, don't do it. Why are you doing it? Let someone who wants to do it, do it. It's more about the enthusiasm. The ability is one thing, but you've got to be there for the right reasons, and I think the audience will know that. And if you're not, they won't come back. Favourite album of all time? Possibly Machine Head by Deep Purple. That'd be up there. That was one of those benchmark albums. When I heard it, I went, whoa! Like, kids at a school I went to, Morley High School in Western Australia, had a lot of English kids, and some of the kids would go back to England for Christmas holidays. They go back and they come back and for the next school year, and they'd bring a cassette tape or something of the albums to school. And I used to I heard Slade that way. I heard Queen, T-Rex, Zeppelin, and Deep Purple. They were like main ones. And so when I heard the Deep Purple one, I went, whoa! I was like, what's this? Yeah, that was the one. That's probably the one that's got me. I saw AC/DC supporting Daddy Cool, and AC/DC before Bon Scott joined. And Angus was wearing a Zorro outfit. He was doing the thing with the sword and the mask. They were supporting Daddy Cool.
If you could go and see a band or an artist tonight, past or present, who would it be?
Past or present? Deep Purple, made in Japan era. So that's 72, 73. I get quite a few complimentary tickets. Well, I've got this surf festival I'm going to next week, so I'm only one of many acts. I'll be watching all the other acts on. It goes over 3 days, or 2.5 days. So, I'll have comps to that, obviously. So that's probably the next one I'll go to. I'll check out all the other bands. There's bands from all over the world. There's a Japanese surf band there called The Wires. There's a few, and I think they cover one of my songs, which is great, So there's a few bands like that there.
Beatles or Stones?
Beatles.
Hendrix or Clapton?
Clapton.
Hagar or Lee Roth?
Lee Roth.
Frida or Agnetha?
Oh, probably Frida.
I'm nervous asking you this question. Fender or Gibson?
If I had to choose one, 51% Fender. Even though my most expensive guitars are Gibsons. I spent more money on Gibson guitars than anything.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Beer or something else?
Maybe a Spirit, or a nice Shiraz or something.
MTV or Rage?
Rage.
Vinyl or streaming?
Streaming because it's convenient.
Stairway to Heaven or Bohemian Rhapsody?
Stairway.
Last one. It's 1 a.m. You've seen a band. You've had a few drinks. It's almost time to head home. What's your kebab order?
I like to go for the mixed kebab. Lamb first, maybe chicken, lamb and chicken, and then garlic sauce.
Making me hungry.
Had one 2 days ago.
Beautiful. Where do you see yourself in 5.5 years?
Still playing, hopefully still playing in the same band. I'll put out some more solo records. I've got 2 or 3 albums I'm working on now, which are almost done. I've just got to do the final mixes on them. I'm still doing what I'm doing, basically. I can still seem to play it. My hands seem to be okay still, and I can still play okay, I think. So,
Is it okay?
They ring all the time, but I can. Yeah, that could be better. I have a bunch of solo albums out, which I started recording in 2007. If you like guitar music, just get on the streaming platforms or my website, martincilia.com, and have a sample and see if you like it. It's there's 100 and something songs released so far. Plenty to choose from, some rock guitars, some surf guitars, some other things. Plus the back catalogue with the Atlantics, and hopefully some Radiator stuff coming up. Yeah, there's still bands playing. The Rads are probably the one that's been the most continuous. It was Mentals up until then, but Rads have probably been the most continuous band that hasn't stopped or ever broken up. It's hard to know what's going to happen next. If there's once there's not enough bands to, like once Daryl Braithwaite goes and Ross Wilson, all those guys, Russell Morris is almost retired now. Once those people retire, that era's gone. There's no one else, you know. So then the next bands from the 90s come up. Hi, I'm Martin Cilia, and you can find my story at the Australian Rock and Roll Museum.